Hi there, happy Earth Day. This is Jack Donahoo, and I will be doing my book report on The Sixth Extinction by Elizabeth Kolbert. I do have my outline here just so I can skip through the notes and keep myself on track. To begin, I'm going to be doing a little bit of introduction. This will be the agenda parts I'll discuss. I'm going to briefly detail what would be expected. I'll be introducing myself, introducing the author briefly, a little bit about the book, reasons why I chose it, why I believe this is a well-constructed book, the value of the information that she's able to provide and how she provides it, her first-hand accounts as to why she believes that this mass extinction may be happening, as well as she discusses several significant subjects that were pertinent to our coursework through the semester. I plan to touch on that a little bit more, and then overall wrap up with her credibility, any recommendations, and end with a quote for it being Earth Day. So, real quick, again, I'm Jack Donahoo, majoring with biology, zoology. This would be Elizabeth Kolbert, who is a staff writer for The New Yorker, as well as a well-known author and who published this in 2014. That means that she's gone on and had been doing field work and investigation and research for years prior to this book. So I feel that there is significance in the generational and decade differences here. For the future reasons on why I chose this book, I do feel she's done extraordinary work with it. Having put so much time and energy and interviews with so many folks around the world, it's just so impressive to hear her accounts through. It's very excellently structured, excuse me. Each chapter has their own specific subject that she touches on or kind of has the purpose or base of the subject itself, yet you may or may not have an interest in maybe what she's talking about. The Panama golden frog, a microorganism for another chapter and sorts. But how she goes and describes and details each of these subjects and species, you soon realize that, I mean, to be kind of coy, you realize that if you hadn't cared about it, you do now. If not, you should, and should probably care and consider it a little bit more. You realize the significance, or further realize the significance of the ecosystem and the environmental health, and how each thing really must rely and does impact each other. So overall, long story short, she does a great job at overall encapsulating the environment, really in a nutshell. She does get scientific with it, but across the board, novice to expert, very easy to understand. It may seem above or a little bit a lot for some folks who are not familiar with such works, but again, it is still written with the typical individual in mind. As I stated, I do really appreciate that she personally went ahead and spent time in the field conducting her own research to support this. She did not just rely on scholarly research or articles to just go ahead and compile this whole thing together. She personally went into Costa Rica, Amazon, pardon me, of course there's a plane going by, right? She trudged right through it. She went and checked out the brown bats throughout North America. She personally interviewed all of these experts throughout the fields and the topics. She went out to Dobbs Lynn in Scotland, observed all of the karsts that show all of the different geological timelines with geologists. I mean, she was right there getting muddy, and backed it up with credible scholarly articles and research. So again, it's impressive and useful enough when someone takes that time and puts it all together, let alone personally puts it together and provides it to you. So with her using the first-hand accounts, with working with the experts, I really feel just puts this book on a whole different shelf from the others. how I wrapped it up here at the end is that she literally she literally travels the entire world. She goes and sees it firsthand, and she comes back stating, you can see this from your own backyard. You can see this event happening and occurring from your own backyard. Basically, if you pay attention to the wildlife, the flora, you'll notice changes in the species and the availability. A little further into detail, the subject she covered, which I just sort of obviously touched on, most of these chapters have all been relative to our coursework in more ways than not. Certainly a majority we have studied, and a little couple more parts of some of the chapters were a little more advanced, where they discuss the species ratio, the species area ratio formula, and so on. So things that we haven't really touched yet, but certainly in this field it will be coming up shortly. I appreciate how she really breaks each of them down. Again, you may not have an interest in the fossil fuels or the geology, but getting into it and seeing how each of them really impact and go into the next is really important. She does an excellent job of breaking that down. She takes a part where she goes into the history of discovering fossil fuels, the use of it for the pre-industrial era, and I wish I had found it. I don't know why I couldn't. There is a part that she used regarding a father and son who back in the late 19th century were able to put some numbers together and determine that there was going to be some issues if we cranked up our use of fossil fuel coming into the Industrial Revolution. So having seen some part where persons were already getting that ahead of it and reading the warnings really was pretty impressive. She further goes into the oceanic acidification process, even touching, of course, with the coral reefs, the zooanthropy. I know we had that over and over again in the lecture, so I kept repeating it most of the day, zooanthropy. I hope that's right, I'm sorry. The carbon dioxide and the photosynthesis process with the oceanic acidification and the lowering of the pH. She greatly took a number of chapters to really break down each one. Again, each having its own kind of separate subject or section, which altogether she really brings it all into one large picture for anybody. With going from the coral reefs in the process, she uses this opportunity to further discuss the resource competition, going into the species diversity and lack of, should the resources be limited, and other species be available or unavailable. Even though they'll be in mass, they'll be in few. And, layman's terms, but to touch base on that. There's a part in this with all of her travels, and she actually landed on a couple of atolls out in the ocean. She landed on One Tree Island, one of the atolls out in the Pacific, while she was discussing the diversity and the invasive species. While she was out there examining the coral reefs with an extraordinary team of researchers, they had almost, she described, where they had a shrine, more or less, a shrine in their facility, which was just a compilation of the bits of plastics that they had found wash ashore in this atoll in the middle of nowhere, quote unquote. But the fact of that impact of seeing how much and how far things can actually reach, where most of us just never see it again and put it out of mind. But here we are in the middle of some important migratory atoll, which is still being invaded by plastics and human contact. Furthering, she details subjects that do go beyond our coursework, such as as I said, the species area ratio, the she includes the ammonites for supporting the oceanic acidification, which we didn't touch on those too much, but I appreciate having this extra subject to correlate and connect everything for. Correlate. Excuse me. um, she also brought into attention some of her work she did with some biologists with the white nose syndrome among the brown bats. That was significantly important recently, and I still feel it is, but we've gotten ahead of that. At the time, it was still a larger issue. She does touch base on repopulation efforts, including the Sumatran rhino, habitat hotspots, and then the latitudinal diversity gradient. I know I recognized that, but I don't believe it was from this course. So, things that it was great that were relative to our coursework, but as well were slightly beyond or advanced, which we know if you're continuing this, you'll be coming along it shortly. Encompassing, I believe, by covering all the chapters the way she did, breaking each of them down, she's been able to provide multiple instances of the most possible likelihood that there is a mass extinction event going on that is anthropocenically driven. I apologize if I tripped over my word, but considering this to be the Anthropocene in terms, which hasn't been formally coined or not formally assigned to this era yet, but I firmly believe that enough evidence supports it. Elizabeth Kolbert is ultimately an incredibly credible author. Her first-hand accounts and her scholarly citations are both above and beyond. I do believe, therefore, that this book should be a part of some curriculums. Obviously, I'm not an educator. My opinion will only matter so much, but I do strongly recommend for educational purposes or individuals. To properly conclude, real quick, given that it is Earth Day and I am a zoology major, I did find this one quote special. So I'll end it with no other than Alfred Russel Wallace. We live in a zoologically impoverished world from which all of the hugest and fiercest and strangest forms have recently disappeared. And it is, no doubt, a much better world for us. A much better world for us, not that they have gone. I apologize. I just see that now. I apologize. I don't want to restart this whole video, so I'm just going to back up and start the quote over. We live in a zoologically impoverished world from which all of the hugest and fiercest and strangest forms have recently disappeared, and it is no doubt a much better world for us now that they have gone. Yet it is surely a marvelous fact, and one that has hardly been sufficiently dwelt upon, that this sudden dying out of so many large mammalia, not in only one place, but over half the surface of the globe. I believe this all requires and deserves a little more attention, a little more consideration, given enough evidence. Thank you.